When couples actually come to your clinic struggling to conceive, how often does the conversation immediately focus towards the woman?
Unfortunately, the realization that men are responsible, and today we realize men are more than 50% responsible for the infertility that's happening.
Right.
People will not understand that it's a cooperative or a collaborative thing. The fact in medical science is that the most expensive sentence that you can make out is surely it's not me.
Doctor, we've all heard that men can father children late into their 70s or even 80s. This is a very common thing that we all hear. But where does this belief actually come from, and how much of it is actually true?
If you look at the man's reproductive life, he retains his ability to make sperms till he dies. But that doesn't mean that the sperms that he's making in his 70s are just as good as the sperms that he's making in his 20s. Biggest message from my side would always be that male infertility exists. It's a real problem. And just because you're able to perform in the bedroom doesn't really mean that you could father a child.
I want to address another misconception that's there, that can a perfectly healthy 25-year-old still have poor sperm quality, and or younger men are usually in the clear?
So if you're young, you may still have bad sperm count because of some organic disease. But in case you are young, then finding a healthy sperm is that much more possible. I'll also tell you here, most men tend to think that they're forever young.
Of course.
And that's a myth, and that's a conception that we need to bust today.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fertility Tales powered by Nova IVF Fertility. I'm your host Simrat, and today we're bringing you a very special World IVF Day episode. One that I believe every couple, every family, and honestly every man should listen to. World IVF Day celebrates one of medicine's greatest breakthroughs. But beyond the science, it's also a reminder that infertility is a medical condition and not a personal failure. For far too long, fertility has largely been viewed as a woman's responsibility. The questions, the pressure, the unsolicited advice, and often even the blame have disproportionately fallen on women. But today, we know better. Medical evidence now tells us that male factor contributes to nearly 50% of all infertility cases, either on their own or alongside female factors. Yet, the conversations around male fertility remain surprisingly rare. Many men still believe their fertility remains unchanged throughout life. Many avoid getting tested because they feel healthy. And many couples lose valuable time because the conversation starts too late. The truth is simple: infertility doesn't discriminate. It isn't about masculinity or femininity, it isn't about blame. And just like diabetes, hypertension, or any other medical condition, infertility deserves timely medical attention, open conversations, and evidence based treatment. So, on this World IVF Day, we're shifting the conversation. Today's episode is: Can men really become fathers at any age? And joining us today is Dr. Rohit Gutgutia, one of India's leading fertility specialists and medical director of Nova IVF Fertility, one of India's leading fertility care networks. Over the past 2 decades, he has helped shape fertility care across the country, training internationally in reproductive medicine, developing clinical protocols, and mentoring fertility specialists. At the heart of his work is a simple philosophy: every couple deserves compassionate, evidence based care and the very best chance at building the family they always dreamt of. Welcome, Dr. Rohit. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and hoping to have this conversation to dive deep into male infertility, especially on World IVF Day.
Super excited to be here as well.
Thank you. As someone who has dedicated his entire career into helping couples become parents, what does this day personally mean to you?
See, dedicated is a big word. I would rather say that I came into this branch of medicine 20 years back as more of a chance and not really as a choice. But today, I can claim that this possibly was my calling. I like this branch of medicine. It gives you instant validation when a patient gets pregnant through one of your procedures. And also, there's a delayed validation in the sense she gives birth and you can actually get to see the baby, the product of your efforts. So, this is what is your biggest kick, as you would say. Regarding this being the World IVF Day or the celebration that we're doing about the World IVF Day, IVF per se is a celebration of modern medical science. From knowing nothing or zilch about reproductive medicine, we have progressed to a level where we can actually identify and make healthy babies. And all of this happened when it started with the first baby born in 1978.
Right.
And it's absolutely imperative that all of us come back and celebrate this every year to remind ourselves what science can achieve.
Beautifully said, doctor. And so, when couples actually come to your clinic struggling to conceive, how often does the conversation immediately focus towards the woman?
See, unfortunately, and I'm sure you've realized that men are shy animals, so they wouldn't talk. And even if they would come as a couple, it is the female partner, the wife, who starts the conversation. And it's imperative that she wants to know what's wrong with her rather than what's wrong with them. So,
Right.
in that sense, the conversation almost always starts with the woman, which is acceptable to me. But unfortunately, in most cases, it ends with the woman without touching on the man. And
Right.
that's where the questions start.
And what does that tell you about how the society still views infertility?
Because obviously it's the female partner who's bearing the child. So if she's not able to bear a child, there's something wrong with her, is how society sees it. Unfortunately, the realization that men are responsible, and today we realize men are more than 50% responsible for the infertility that's happening,
Right.
people will not understand that it's a cooperative or a collaborative thing. And we, as an Indian society, as a largely patriarchal society, we are far behind in the understanding that if you're not getting pregnant, the problem could be either of you. Honestly speaking, what I've realized in my practice, and this is like another 20 years of practice that I've done so far, is that almost every man would assume that there's nothing wrong with him. And unfortunately, the fact in medical science is that the most expensive sentence that you can make out is, surely it's not me. And that's the most counterproductive statement to make.
Very, very imperative, doctor. And if there is one myth that you could bust about male infertility or fertility today, what would that be?
So, of course, as a corollary, quite obviously, it takes two to tango. You need the man and the woman to get together to give birth. And today's reality is, in 50% of patients or couples who do not get pregnant, it is the man directly who's responsible. So, this is something we have to realize from a position where the man can never go wrong. We are in a situation where we realize that in almost one out of two couples not getting pregnant, it is the man who's responsible.
Doctor, we've all heard that men can father children late into their 70s or even 80s. This is a very common thing that we all hear. But where does this belief actually come from, and how much of it is actually true?
See, it's a kind of a situation where there is some truth in it, but it's not the whole truth.
Okay.
You have a situation where we are all aware that women undergo menopause. And that's something which is very tangible and obvious.
Right.
So, because menopause is the end for the reproductive life for a female partner, so that's quite obviously seen by all of us. We do not really understand that men also have andropause. We also have not understood fully that men, as they grow older, have a reduction in their sexual abilities and also in the sperm quality. So, and you have the one off cases, I would say the outliers, where you have a Mick Jagger or a Charles Chaplin giving birth to their partners in the
Right.
60s and 70s. So, this adds to the whole story around the fact that men could father children. Yes, in real terms, they could, but in most situations, they cannot.
Then why do you think that male fertility receives such little attention as compared to female fertility?
This is one of those inequalities. We keep saying that women have unfair share of reproductive burden imposed on them. It affects their career and it also affects their family life in the sense that if they're not able to bear children, it is they who are held responsible. But we need to understand, we need to change this thought process. The narrative has to change, and this is where we are getting together on these podcasts basically to talk about this.
Right.
Unfortunately, the situation remains that women have to bear this burden.
And especially having this conversation on World IVF Day, what's that one thing you wish every couple would know about male fertility that they probably don't?
Biggest message from my side would always be that infertility exists. It's a real problem. It's not that it's a figment of imagination. And just because you're able to perform in the bedroom doesn't really mean that you could father a child. You need to go out, check yourself, just as a female partner would need to be sure that you can father a child.
And we were having this conversation about the person living a healthy lifestyle and still saying that it wouldn't be me.
True.
Do you think that's enough?
So yes, of course, we tend to put a lot of weightage or emphasis on whether you're a smoker or whether you drink or whether there's been substance abuse. All said and done, infertility is also largely an organic disease.
Right.
So there would be absolutely no symptoms from outside. You would be hale and hearty, you'd be performing all your duties, and still you would be carrying infertility in the sense your sperm quality is not healthy, or maybe you're not making sperms at all. Unfortunate reality is there are almost 5 men out of 100 who would show no symptoms whatsoever, but still their sperm would make them so-called sterile males,
Right.
in the sense that they cannot father a child in the normal reproductive way.
Doctor, fortunately, unfortunately, we hear women talk about their biological clock all the time, and the world never lets them forget, also.
So true.
So, but men also have a biological timeline, I would assume, and it might just look different. Could you help us understand what actually changes?
So this is a question that needs deconstruction. And I'm so happy you asked this question. So there are men who would be young, outwardly healthy, and still not making enough sperms to father a child. Let's leave them alone. They are the ones who are supposedly infertile or subfertile and may require intervention even when they're young.
Okay.
Even otherwise, if you look at the man's reproductive life, he retains his ability to make sperms till he dies. No question about it. But that doesn't mean that the sperms that he's making in his 70s are just as good as the sperms that he's making in his 20s. And that's something that we've realized over the last 20, 30 years. So there is a decline in sperm quality as well. Maybe not as sudden or as precipitous as in a woman's case. There's a gradual decline in sperm quality, but it's there. I'll make out some facts for you. So the moment it seems that the man becomes 45 and more, there are much higher chances of the baby that is fathering to have aneuploidies.
What's
That
that,
is,
doctor?
that is chromosomal aberrations leading to babies which may not survive birth.
Okay.
There are so many other things, and I'm happy to discuss in details as well with you. But what is to be understood is that semen, that's the vital liquid that comes out, that is fluid that is manufactured by the prostate and the seminal vesicles. These are two accessory sex glands. They do not make so much of semen as you grow older. So the big thing that happens is the semen volume comes down as you grow older. The sperm count would largely be okay, but the sperm's ability to swim, and it has to swim a large distance to be able to go and fertilize the egg, that reduces over time. And looks of the sperm has a particular look. There's a head, there's a tail, and there's a neck. The look of the sperm changes. It becomes more damaged, more dysmorphic. It does not look the right way as you grow older. Most important point is as you step into your 50s and 60s, more and more sperms have DNA damage. If you look at it, the sperm is just a vehicle to carry the male DNA into the female egg.
Right.
Now, if the DNA is damaged, then obviously you don't make healthy babies. So while your ability to make semen and sperm is there, your ability to father a child, and a healthy child at that, is diminishing as you are growing older.
All right. And that gets me to my next question, which is we are all hearing about it. It's called DNA fragmentation, if I'm
Yes,
not
yes,
mistaken.
yes,
So,
yes.
could you tell me I mean, what does it mean, especially for those in their late 30s and 40s?
So DNA, we now all understand, is the code of life. That's
Right.
something that's unique to us, and we carry that DNA as our signature. Now, for the man's DNA is highly coiled up and packed inside the head of the sperm. Over time, because of oxidative stress, that's stress happening to the body because of lifestyle issues, substance abuse, obesity, and aging. aging being the primary force, what happens is that DNA gets damaged. And over time, this damage becomes more and more pronounced. And when the DNA gets damaged, the shape of the head also changes.
Right.
And the speed of the sperm, the motility of the sperm also reduces. So, all put together, the sperms are less and less able to fertilize the egg and make healthy babies. So, this is the DNA damage. Also, there's something called the RNA. That RNA also gets damaged as you grow older. And this RNA, therefore, is also responsible for the making of the embryo and the fertilization process. So this also leads to less and less fertilization, more and more abnormal embryos. So this genetic damage happens right when you're growing older because of the aging process.
Okay, and because you're talking about aging and DNA fragmentation, definitely paternal age then becomes an important
Absolutely.
aspect during IVF
Absolutely.
consultations, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
does it ever change the treatment approach from your end?
Okay, so there is a yes and no to it. So we have a law that's in place where men above 55 are not allowed to father a child through the process of IVF.
Okay,
So in that sense, we do not have cases or situations where we tell the male partner that we are not going ahead because of age factor.
okay,
But having said that, we do need to counsel our couples once we see somebody with an advanced age, and by advanced I mean the man more than 45,
right.
that there are higher risks. And what are those risks? As I mentioned, aneuploidy, that is chromosomal aberrations in the baby. We also have evidence which says that more and more these babies could have dwarfism.
Hmm.
Interesting, but that's the correction that we have found out.
Right,
Autism is something that we are hearing often these days.
right.
So it is now being connected to the paternal age. And of things like neuropsychiatric diseases, substance abuse, all this also is somehow related with the older man's sperm.
I think I'd like to delve more into the issues of paternal age and lifestyle diseases, but I want to address another misconception that's there, that can a perfectly healthy 25-year-old still have poor sperm quality, and or younger men are usually in the clear?
So if you're young, you may still have bad sperm count because of some organic disease. But in case you are young, then finding a healthy sperm is
Hmm.
that much more possible. But as you grow older, the aging process itself has damaged your sperms.
Right.
I'll also tell you here, most men tend to think that they're forever young.
Of
And
course.
and that's a myth and that's a conception that we need to bust today.
Yeah.
So you may be in your mind, you may be a college student or you may be carrying the ego of a 25-year-old, but your sperms are worsening every passing day.
That's one note for, I think, every man to consider when they hear this. But um, since more couples today are now choosing to have children later in their life, be it because of lifestyle or choices that they've made, should men also be thinking about preserving their fertility through sperm freezing, just as women increasingly now that you hear are opting for egg freezing? And who should actually consider it?
See, egg freezing has now moved from an experimental sort of a medicine to a practical usability today
Right.
because of the very simple fact that men and women both are delaying pregnancies because of career choices and other
Right.
reasons. And it's nobody's business. Women have a right to choose when they want to get pregnant.
Absolutely.
When they freeze their eggs, they are liberated in that sense. It's never plan A, and we should not give out this message that once you've frozen eggs, you're free. That's always a plan B, but that's a solid plan B that you have.
Right.
With men, the situation is that the sperm would worsen over time, but it's a gradual decline. And again, the cutoff for them that we take is 45.
Okay.
So, by common consensus, by 45, most people would have fathered their children in case they're looking at that kind of a life. So, semen freezing solely for the purposes of preserving your fertility into later life is not happening, and we do not recommend either. But there are special situations where you would be going away for some time, working elsewhere, and you would like to start a family, even in your absence, if possible, because of time constraints. So, this is known as offshore infertility, where
Hmm.
because of work reasons, both the partners are not staying together,
Hmm.
or where unfortunately the man has been afflicted with some condition where he needs to be treated with the chemotherapy, radiotherapy, such as cancers, where there is a possibility that the treatment might damage his sperm making abilities, which is where we recommend a semen freezing. Let me also tell you that freezing of sperms is far more reliable than egg freezing because you have millions of sperms which are available at every ejaculate. So it's a simpler and a more reliable process than egg freezing. Egg freezing, still, we are talking numbers of tens and twenties maybe. When you freeze semen, you freeze millions.
All right. Um, that's very interesting to know, doctor. And I had a question, which is then why don't couples who want to have a family later in life and who are in their prime and who've decided, so why wouldn't they preserve their fertility in terms of at a younger age they would be able to freeze their eggs and also their sperm so that later in life probably they could make the healthiest of the baby.
Yeah, so of course, so that's the argument that we are facing. There's so many couples who walk into our clinics and say, Doctor, we are okay. We think that we can parent the children, but we don't want to do it now. We want to postpone it for 10 years and then they come back to it. The clinical answer to that is as you grow older, there's a higher chance that you have associated conditions such as diabetes or high blood pressure, which would make your pregnancy journey riskier. So, in case you are okay and you can, it's preferred that you complete your parenting journey as early as possible.
Okay.
So, that's like common sense question. In certain circumstances where it's just not possible, we are okay to postpone it to the 40s, not beyond. So, that's what our understanding or compromise today is. Regarding men freezing sperms, as I mentioned, solely for the purposes of preserving fertility, because that trend or that thought has not come in that you freeze sperms for healthier sperms, we do not do it. But that's also a consideration that will over time develop into a solid medical suggestion when we see men delaying parenthood into their 50s and 60s for whatever reason.
Right.
Interesting insight is that there's almost a 20-year shift that's happening over the last 100 years for women who've parented children. So maybe they were parenting children at the age of 16, 18, 20, 100 years back, and now they're roughly doing it almost at around 34, 36.
Right.
So that's the shift that's happened. And that's also because we are living longer.
Right.
So the earlier 60 has now become the 80. So as we grow older and as we survive longer, maybe we'll be delaying parenthood. That's not something that is suggested. That's something that's coming across as a reality.
Very, very interesting, doctor. This is a question which is also going to be a little controversial to ask, but um, female egg freezing, the process definitely, as compared to male egg freezing, is male sperm freezing is more. It's complex. It also takes a lot of involvement from the woman to, retrieve the eggs and then have them frozen. But then, why do you think men are not preserving their fertility?
Absolutely. I don't know whether you noticed this or not. A woman would walk into a clinic, and I am a male gynec.
Yeah.
They would walk into my clinic, very often alone, to discuss their fertility options. Definitely with their friend or parents, and of course with their partner. Men would never ever come alone to our clinics. They need to be tagged along.
Yeah.
So this is where I keep saying that men are shy animals. They tend to believe that they can never go wrong. So that's a big myth that we need to bust. B, even if they think that they've gone wrong or maybe something is wrong with it, they still need that prod and the push to be taken to the clinic and the whole process be done. It is so unfortunate because actually freezing semen or sperms requires no effort at all.
Yeah.
Whereas the female partner has to take 10, 12 injections and she has to undergo a procedure under anesthesia. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. As of now, men are not willing or available to freeze their semen unless pushed for it.
Yeah, I think as we do progress in this podcast, we will talk about early, interventions also. But this is something which we feel we take so much for granted. I think when something really has to go wrong in your life, only then you will be able to understand the right kind of intervention that needs to be taken. But I think this is such a food for thought for people who feel that, like you said, can perform in bed, then probably cannot father children.
Absolutely.
So, really interesting to know this. Doctor, another area that is rarely discussed and is the role men play in, say, miscarriages and genetics, right? So, most people instinctively associate this with the woman's health. But the science, I believe, is much broader than that, than to push one blame. So, there's growing evidence about paternal age. So, can you explain the connection in simple terms?
Have you ever wondered about the word miscarriage? The entire construct of that word is loaded against the female partner.
Yeah,
So you were not able to carry a pregnancy. It is so unfair to the female partner, honestly.
absolutely.
And we are evolving. Just as we had no understanding that men could be responsible for infertility, and now we know almost 50% is because of men. Now we have understood that even miscarriages, and let's call it pregnancy losses and not miscarriages anymore,
Right.
is also linked to the man just as it is linked to the woman. And that's my opening statement here. Let's understand this very clearly. Having said that, miscarriages or pregnancy losses have a myriad of reasons. If the pregnancy loss is happening in the first 3 months, it is invariably to do with the embryo. And when I talk of the embryo is built out of an egg and a sperm. So the sperm is responsible just as the egg may be.
Right.
And we have more and more evidence coming in that the embryo has not formed, or what it was known as an embryonic pregnancy, that the sac is formed but the fetus was not there. All of these could be somehow related to the paternal side and not really from the maternal egg.
Okay, and there is evidence that we have
Absolutely.
for this.
Absolutely.
So, how much of a role can sperm quality, and particularly like you mentioned and you explained, DNA fragmentation, can play in a pregnancy loss then?
So when the DNA itself is damaged,
Right.
and as I mentioned, the RNA is also not healthy,
Hmm.
so it does not really trigger. So when the male sperm travels into the egg, it actually carries the DNA from the man to the female egg and then they unite, and a new machine of sorts is created, which then propels the egg to form an embryo, and then the embryo keeps dividing into cells, and that's how the differentiation happens. So when the DNA is not right, the
Hmm.
trigger, the engine doesn't work right, and then the cell division doesn't happen properly, or it goes in the wrong direction and the embryo doesn't form properly.
Okay.
So this is all due to, or largely due to, aneuploidies, that is chromosomal defect in the egg, or DNA damage in the man's sperm. And all this is evolving story.
Right.
So because genetics is not well understood, we are learning more and more about it on a daily basis. So therefore we cannot come out and tell you that this is the reason for this, but largely it's been proven that the man's sperm is equally responsible for the miscarriages that's happening in the first 3 months of pregnancy.
And this must be such a revolutionary
Absolutely.
wave, right?
So nowadays, when we attend conferences, this is the focus of attention.
Of course. And I also believe that studies have explored links between some advanced paternal age and some neurodevelopmental issues. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because you did mention in the beginning of the episode about how it
True.
could affect the autism spectrum and the likes of those. So I only ask because this blame game and this,
True.
I'm not asking to shift the blame to men, but to stop the blame and also to address this question that what needs to be done at the right time.
So you need to correctly understand the situation. You don't need to apportion blame to
Right.
any of the
Correct.
partners. But it's so unfortunate that at some point autism was ascribed to a mistaken notion that the mother is cold and not loving to the child. And from there we moved on to the vaccination story, that if you put
Yeah.
vaccines
Yeah.
into your baby, then you possibly provoke autistic changes in the baby. Now we understand that it has to do with small, insignificant but yet damaging changes that happen in the DNA of the sperm of the man due to aging process, which may be linked to autism. Now when we talk about either autism,
Right.
which is a spectrum,
Of course.
or other neurodevelopmental conditions, or even schizophrenia,
Right.
or maybe today we are being told that alcohol abuse and dependence is also higher in male babies born out of parents or father was more than 45. These are all population studies.
Hmm.
So this is not cause effect. This is more like an association that we are finding out.
Right.
We are still yet to find out what's responsible for what.
Of
But we
course.
do know that dwarfism has a genetic mutation associated with it, and that has to do with the changes, the spontaneous mutations that happen in the DNA of the sperm. So, all this is evolving. We are learning more and more about it. But what it puts to light for us to understand is how unfair we have been to the female partner generally when something like this has happened in the family.
Yeah.
Today, we need to understand the scientific basis of it and be very clear to us that maybe aging process, whether the male partner or the female partner, is the primary responsibility.
Oh,
But I should also tell you
yes.
that when we talk of these conditions, we should not forget that a large, overwhelmingly large population would still have healthy babies.
That's a ray of hope that
That's
we
something that we should not miss out.
that's what we should remember before beginning this conversation also. So for couples who are going through IVF, are these genetic risks something that they should be screened for? And what does the process look like today? Because we've had this conversation about the possibilities of something going wrong, but I'm sure there are tests today. And who should be screened for it? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So the golden rule in medicine is always prevention is better than cure.
Of
So
course.
one way of looking at it is that when you're young and able, please complete your family as soon as possible for you, socially and otherwise, so that you don't even get into that situation where you have to consider these things.
Right.
However, having said this, I must also tell you that most couples or most men would father healthy babies even when they are in their 40s.
Hmm.
So that's nothing to be so much worried about. Unfortunately, the screening tools are not very reliable. We can only screen for life threatening conditions, and that also not all life threatening
Hmm.
conditions, because there's so many genes involved with these conditions that we have not understood the whole story about it. So the best thing to do is, if you are looking at a baby in your 40s, at least get a DNA fragmentation test done for your semen before you actually move into this.
Okay.
There is no one way of correcting your DNA fragmentation, but then
Hmm.
it gives you an understanding that there are higher than normal risks of miscarriages, and you should be aware of that.
Hmm.
Even as a counseling tool, we use DNA fragmentation and sperm count to counsel our couples that these may be possibilities and you should be aware of. And this is the way we are going. Treatment is not there. It's largely counseling and also understanding that younger you are, better your sperm health.
That's true. And I think as couples mature in their relationship, I think that is also now becoming slowly the norm to get a fertility test done as a very understood and a normal thing to for your future, so that not to make dire consequences out of it, but to make the right intervention at the right time, right?
So true, so true. I think it should be absolutely okay for both partners in a marriage and a stable marriage to
Yeah.
go out actively and get themselves checked, either for the egg reserve or the ovarian reserve, and also for a basic semen analysis.
Yeah.
None of these are very invasive or very expensive tests, but they do give you peace of mind, and they also allow you to kind of plan your family forward. So
Right. Doctor, let's talk about something people can actually control now. We've spoken about all the factors that people might not have a control over. I'm talking about lifestyle. So, what are the top three everyday habits that you think are quietly damaging the male fertility today?
okay, so very good that you raise lifestyle. See, lifestyle is not really so important as it's made out to be. What is important is this is in our control.
Yeah.
So, if I am looking at a healthy lifestyle, essentially what I'm looking at is good sleep. That's something that we ignore in urban lives. Looking at moderate exercises
Hmm.
and being very conscious about your smoking and alcohol habits.
Right. So you're telling me that lifestyle can play a huge role in your daily activities, but sperm quality is something that you can't control.
No, it's not about control or not control. What is coming out in all these social media posts and
Yeah.
discussions that we have is
Hmm.
somehow we relate sperm health solely and fully with lifestyle issues.
Of course.
It's not like that. It's like an organic disease, it's like a genetic background. There are reasons why sperms are not healthy, and some people have healthier sperms and some do not,
Okay.
even though they may be smokers.
Right.
What we need to understand is lifestyle management
Right.
will optimize your sperm health, will make sure that whatever God has given you is going to be in its best of health.
Okay.
But lifestyle is not going to solve for sperm problems. So that's something that we need to understand.
Okay, so I have a couple of social media myths for you. Please tell us about them. Do laptops on laps actually matter?
So this is something that keeps cropping up
I'm
all the
sure.
time.
Yeah.
So somebody who's working on a laptop, you can't ask him or her to no stop working on the laptop. Yes, anything that's generating heat. So whether it's sauna or a laptop or anything else, maybe even bicycling for long hours,
Right.
generates heat, and sperms get manufactured in testes,
Hmm.
which are kept in a sac outside of the body because they need a cooler environment to make sperms and healthy sperms.
Right.
So anything that's making heat, and in a tropical country like ours,
Right.
you should avoid heat because heat actually reduces sperm manufacturing ability. But
Okay.
the laptop for 2 to 3 hours on your lap, is it like making your sperms go really bad? No, it's not as drastic as this.
Okay. On the contrary, I've heard that very cold temperatures also can have an adverse effect.
Absolutely, absolutely. So basically, there's a temperature at which the body functions.
Okay.
So what you need to make sure is that the ambient temperature that you're working with is usually around 24, 25 degrees in that sense.
All right. The next is mobile phones in pockets.
Same here,
Same logic.
same logic. So mobile phone also generates radiation.
Right.
We still do not know what's optimum for human health.
Right.
And we would say it is good practice to keep it away from your testes and also from your heart.
Right.
But then we really cannot quantify as to what amount of damage is happening because of the phone being kept in your.
And the same logic I think applies to hot baths as well.
No, hot bath is definitely not, it's a no no because that's generating heat and the water is actually more than 40 degrees.
Right.
So that's something that you should avoid in case you're looking at fathering a child.
Okay.
So that, because honestly, the hot bath exposure is not more than 5-10 minutes or so. So that's okay so far as you're doing it once in a while, but regular sauna or hot bath should be avoided. And even tight underwears.
Yes, so that was my question next. Tight underwears.
So
What
same
is
thing. They're sticking to your body for a long duration of the day.
okay?
So these are two things you should look at avoiding.
Doctor, talking about this really makes me want to understand the life cycle of a sperm. So, can you tell me a little bit about it? Because here I'm thinking that, new sperm might get generated. So, what is the life cycle like so that is there new sperm getting generated? How long does the old batch last? Like, what is the life
Yeah,
cycle?
so you're technically making almost 100 million sperms daily. And that sounds quite a lot,
Yeah,
but then you waste a lot of them.
of course.
So it takes almost 70-75 days for the sperm to mature into the final form. And then it travels through a large tract inside the body to come out to the open. So we say that a sperm cycle is almost around 90 days or 3 months.
Okay.
Now, in case you had fever or you were generally not healthy in a particular time, the sperms will not show up as healthy 3 months later.
Okay.
So ideally, when you're going for a semen analysis, also you should keep in mind that I should have been healthy 3 months back, because otherwise your reports may not come out to be very healthy or normal. On the flip side, of course, if you're looking at doing something, you should manage your lifestyle. You should make sure that you are not having fever for at least two sperm cycles before you go for a sperm test.
Since we're talking about lifestyle also, stress becomes like an unavoidable question uh, and it's there. Everybody's going through it. Everybody's facing that. So, what does chronic stress do to the male reproductive system?
So I'll give you two stories here, honestly. See, first of all, we've been this living on Mother Earth for so many thousands and lakhs of years, and we have never been as less stressed as we are today. We have food on the table, we have largely a job at hand. So therefore, when people come back and tell me that they are stressed, I try and debunk that, because all in our lives in historical times the stress was far much more because there was no surety of when your next meal will come from.
Right.
So stress is one of those overhyped social media entities. Yes, in case you have undue stress, something you have not faced for some reason, something new that's cropped up, you lost a job, or there's something that you're fretting about, your health condition, then that might have an effect. Because we all know the flight and fear response.
Right.
So if the body is shutting down or is assuming that hard times are ahead, the reproductive system would also suffer. But by and large, the stress that we face commuting in our job
Yeah.
and handling our work pressure, that should not or does not impact your sperm quality.
What about physiological stress, like psychological stress? I mean, I'm sure that do you think has no bearing on the sperm
I
quality?
wouldn't say it has no bearing, but it has, as on now, overhyped bearing as far as social media is concerned.
Okay.
We need to keep in mind that if it is manageable, so long as it's not affecting your sleep cycle, it's not affecting your sperms.
All
If
right.
it's become so much that it's affecting your sleep cycle, you've gotten into substance abuse to get out of it,
Hmm.
something that's going wrong with your body, you're neglecting your food, you've gone into depression maybe in that sense,
Right.
then it might affect your sperm quality.
Okay, and if someone is listening today who decides to actually make healthier choices in their life, better nutrition, less alcohol, better sleep, regular exercise, how long before sperm quality actually begins to improve? Will it?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is something that's imperative in case you're looking at starting a family. At least 6 months of being a good, gentle way of living is a must before you start looking at the sperm health being improved.
Got it. So 6 months it takes for you to turn the leaf
You have
around.
to give yourself 6 months.
And one question also that people may have would be, are there any supplements or specific diets that improve sperm health?
So again, one of those overhyped questions. I don't feel that our nutrition is so finicky or so controlled by what we consume.
Right.
So long as you have balanced meals,
Hmm.
so long you're managing your proteins, your carbs, and your trace elements, you really don't need to go for your uh, labeled products, supplements to improve your sperm quality.
Right.
That's something that is oversold, and nutrition is something that is understood to have a peripheral effect on the sperm quality and not necessarily a central effect.
Right.
Most of us in today's scenario are healthy in terms of what we consume.
Got it, doctor. And again, a more controversial question here. What about testosterone supplements? What about protein supplements? Do you think they actually help? Or Shilajit for that matter?
So again, these are difficult questions to answer because there are case specific and individual
Right.
specific
Right.
requirements. Testosterone, definitely a no.
Okay.
So, because exogenous or testosterone given from outside would actually have a dampening effect on your testes,
Oh.
and it would reduce your sperm count, even make it zero.
Hmm.
So, testosterone supplements given out liberally, freely in gyms has to be avoided at all costs. Because testosterone has what is known as a negative feedback on your brain, and that reduces your sperm manufacturing. So, that has to be very, very clear about this.
Got it.
Regarding other supplements like creatine,
Yeah.
and also protein supplements, I would tend to agree with the argument that Indian diet has less of protein than required.
Of course.
So long as you're topping it up, it makes sense. But you don't need to go overboard with any of these supplements.
Got it. Uh, this is a question off topic, but not off topic, but off the script. But when people are trying to conceive, you know, uh, a woman's reproductive period is called ovulation, right?
Absolutely.
Where she's primed to have a baby. What about men? Is it? It is a. I don't know if it's a myth, but they say, should you not ejaculate for some time so that you're able to have a healthy child or are able to conceive better? Is there any truth in that? That
Again,
it
one of those questions I really am so happy you've opened up with. See, ejaculation is a normal physiological process. It's letting out of the sperms that you've already manufactured and
right?
are storing in your system.
Correct.
If you do not ejaculate, chances are the semen would still come out through nightfalls.
Right.
So, the myth around ejaculation and this understanding that if you are masturbating, that somehow damages your sperm quality or sexual health is so wrong. In fact, American urology societies have actually come out and recommended that you should ejaculate at least 21 times in a month. So, that's for good prostate health.
Right.
So we all need to understand and appreciate that that's a bodily fluid that needs to come out often enough for you to stay healthy
And produce healthy sperm as
and
well.
produce healthy sperms. If you have old sperms in your system, chances are they are also damaged and they carry DNA differentiation and fragmentation in them. So rather than holding on to your semen or sperms, you need to ejaculate frequently enough to
Yeah.
keep your sperms healthy, young, and alive.
Very. Thanks for debunking this, doctor. I think
Very, very
our
important.
listeners would be really grateful to know this. So much misinformation out there, right? Like so many assumptions, so many false things that people could give credit to and start believing something. It could rather be detrimental, right?
Absolutely.
Which makes me want to ask you this question about what is the right time for somebody to get that right kind of medical intervention. Like for women, we know that when you've been trying for a year, I mean, that's what the conversation usually goes, that if you've been trying for a year, a healthy couple, they should look at fertility options and into reproductive medicine. But then, when is the right time for a man to make that medical intervention?
See, we've kind of covered a lot of things today. One standout message from my side would be, in case you're conscious about the fact that you could be suffering from any kind of a sperm issue or a male issue,
Hmm.
just as anybody else,
Hmm.
then the first and foremost thing is there's no age or bar to get a semen analysis done.
Okay.
You need not really wait for a pregnancy to not happen to go out and get a semen test. It's the easiest test that can be carried out, and semen analysis, for that matter, is the cornerstone of diagnosing male reproductive diseases. So you should, or one should be capable, strong, and mentally prepared enough to get the test done as and when they want to.
Okay.
And ideally, the best time to do it be before you're getting into a partnership with the partner.
Right.
Once you've done that, settled that, I think you're in peace of mind. So that's the first comment that I'd like to make. Second is, it's a couple that suffers from infertility, not an
Not
individual.
right.
Say if a man and woman married together, trying for a year and not getting pregnant, go and end up in my clinic or somebody else's clinic, it is that both of them need to be investigated and simultaneously.
Hmm.
In fact, today we get the man investigated first, because there's a concept of invasive and a non-invasive test.
Correct.
Testing a man is so much more easier. There's no prick, there's no injection, there's nothing, no intervention whatsoever. The female test will still require a transvaginal ultrasound or some blood test, which are in that sense invasive.
Right.
So the first test that should be done to a couple is a semen analysis. And for all conscious men, actually you should get a semen analysis done even before you're entering into marriage.
Right. Doctor, I'm going to come to the basics and ask you what kind of a doctor actually is it a urologist? Is it an andrologist? What kind of a doctor actually treats male infertility? Is it a male gynec? I just want to understand as a.
So yes, technically infertility from the man falls under a domain called andrology.
Okay.
It's again one of those evolving branches of medicine. You do not have too many people who practice as standalone andrologists.
Okay.
But andrologist is somebody who's a background in training in urology.
Okay.
And of course, there are some gynecs also who practice andrology. But by and large, what we are talking about today, that can be easily handled by a general practitioner or a family physician as well.
Okay.
You really don't need to go to somebody who's like higher up the rank as far as specialities is concerned.
Okay.
A basic SIM analysis can be carried out under the prescription of any family physician, and the family physician is well equipped to guide you about the interpretation of that test, and then of course he can then refer you up the chain.
Doctor, this might be the most important part I feel in today's conversation because sometimes the biggest challenge I feel isn't biology, it's also mindset. And, you know, when we are conversing, we're talking about sexual health, we're talking about reproductive health, we're talking about how not associating your sexual activity to your ability to have children,
Children.
right? So, in your experience, when couples struggle to conceive, how long does it usually take before the man actually agrees to be tested?
So again, there's no straight answer to it. There are men who are willing to get tested right away, but there's so many more men who insist that just because they are able to perform, they don't see there is a problem with them.
Right.
And they in fact talk in a way or act in a way that makes it very obvious that they are not open to the discussion that they need to undergo a test. It is unfortunate, but that's a large majority for our patients even today.
Uh, Very interesting because that was going to be my next question. That what is why is male infertility still so closely tied to masculinity and ego?
It's
So then,
so sad. It's actually so sad. See, I always say, and I always mention this in meetings and otherwise platforms such as these, is that if you're not very blunt about it, The nose and the mouth are close, but the nose has a completely different objective and the mouth has a completely different objective. Similarly, you have to realize that the penis and the scrotum or the testes are closely associated or located. But the penis has a completely different job to do, and the testes has a completely different job to do. The testes make sperms, which will give you a baby, and the penis is the organ for copulation. So these are completely different organs. Now, unfortunately, just because one of the obvious organs of copulation is working, we tend to assume that the other organ must be functioning as well, which
Right.
is not true.
I love that analogy, doctor. And but when you actually break the news to somebody that they might be suffering from male infertility, I want to know how do they actually take it and how do those conversations actually unfold?
I will not fault the male partner here because in most of our women's cases, there is a very obvious, tangible association with infertility. Mostly, the cycles are not regular.
Right.
But in men, there is sometimes or more often than not, there is no obvious, tangible association. So, for them to assume or even accept that there is something wrong on the basis of a semen analysis is very difficult. So, the most obvious response is they were not able to do the semen analysis properly because of some reason. Maybe there was a knock on the door when they collected the semen sample. They were mentally not prepared.
Right.
They really cannot masturbate and give a sample, and they're required to do it some other ways.
Right.
These are the most often excuses that are given to us.
Right.
And we need to sit down with them, give them ample time, counsel them in that words to make them understand that whether this one sample or two samples, unless you are convinced, we are not going to go ahead. So the most often advice is please come back and repeat a semen analysis within the next couple of months at your convenience, at your place and location of choice, so that you are convinced that something is wrong with you. And this does work in most cases.
So it cannot be carried, like they cannot sort of, oh, okay.
So this is a body fluid. It has to be maintained at the body temperature.
Right.
So ideally, best case scenario is always to ejaculate at the clinic where you're getting the test done. In some exceptional circumstances, you could carry it on your body, but you need to bring the sample to the clinic within 30 minutes. So we'd still not trust that.
Right.
Because of the body fluid not being yours is also a concern that we carry.
Of course.
So mostly it is preferred that you come and give the sample in our clinics. And we make all the arrangements so that you are comfortable while giving the sample.
And what if a man tells you that, doctor, I don't need testing. I feel completely healthy. I feel perfectly healthy. What do you tell them?
Yeah, we have had situations like that. And we have had situations where we had to run the entire gamut of tests for the female partner before approaching the man once again. That now, see, all her reports are fine, so we really need to get into your test. Thankfully, that count is coming down. So that's something also we need to appreciate. Our men are learning that they also need to undergo the test required.
That's good to know because that was leading to my next question that, younger men, I'm sure, are being more open to
Absolutely.
fertility testing. So,
Absolutely.
or do we actually have still a long way to go? What do you think? Like, is there now are men actually open to being tested and have that conversation and keep that dialogue open?
Yeah, so there's a marked improvement. Over the last 20 odd years that I've been practicing, there is an acceptance of male infertility. There's so much that's appearing in social media, in general net searches and all that, that
Right.
people have accepted that there's a condition called male infertility. Most people would still not be the first one to stick their hand out, but they are willing to be the second person or also willing to do it concurrently with their female partner and also accept the diagnosis that's put out to them.
Doctor, what do you think that how can we make men more equal participants in this fertility journey instead of silent observers? I mean, I would say they have come a long way, like you said, but
Absolutely.
how do you think we can have more of this equal participation in this?
That has to evolve over time. There's so much more that's happening in other spheres of life. You can see so many things changing elsewhere also. People wanting to stay together, try out living together before getting to marriages. A lot of equality is actually getting into the society as a whole. And this will also be a subset of that. You cannot really go out and tell people that no, you should first consider reproductive equality rather than all other equalities.
Yeah, long shot.
Exactly. But all of them will all move together. And I'm absolutely sure that the next generation will be a far more equal society.
Yeah, here's hoping.
Absolutely.
Let's make this a little bit more practical than utopian, as we would assume. And for someone who's not ever thought about fertility before, where should they begin?
Men.
Yeah, men.
Men for sure, they need to get a semen analysis done.
Okay.
Please remember this is a test which is simple, carried out easily in most of the labs across the country, state that you stay in. And this is definitely the most informative test that you can carry out regarding your reproductive health.
And is it as intimidating as people might think and imagine? Or
I
what
would,
are the steps of
yeah,
it?
so I
Like,
would
what would
call
you
it
think?
intimidating. It's more uncomfortable because the whole concept of masturbating in an alien place
Right.
on command, giving a sample, and then waiting for the results is what is uncomfortable about the
Yeah.
whole thing. But that's also a learning curve. People do need to realize that this is just like one of those tests that needs to be done. Over time people are learning that this is a test that has huge amount of bearing not only on the reproductive health. So more and more research is now coming out that the longevity or the long term health of the individual is also related or correlated with the sperm health. So
Oh,
some people who tend to have lower sperm counts or less of quality issues tend to have comorbidities or other conditions associated with their health later on. So in that sense, semen can be taken as a marker of your overall health.
that's like, well, like for women, of course.
Similarly for
Um,
women.
so beyond semen analysis, what hormone testing or like you mentioned DNA fragmentation, what genetic testing become necessary for?
So usually you don't need to do anything for men.
Okay.
So you need to find out how they are in terms of sexual performance is
Mm-hmm.
concerned. You do the semen analysis, and very often not then this is done.
Okay.
In some certain cases where the sperm count is not up to mark, and you would assume that it may be one of those treatable conditions,
Right.
they would like to do some hormone test. There's something called the follicle stimulating hormone, and there's something called the total testosterone levels that we check to find out how the testes are functioning. And rarely, we also do a genetic test and a chromosome test to find out whether they have a genetic reason why the sperms are not getting manufactured.
Got
But
it.
these are few and far between.
All right. Rather fairly simple for this. My next question was something I think you already answered. That what would you recommend a healthy man to proactively check for their fertility before they're actively planning for a family?
Always a semen analysis.
And I think, especially when they are entering into a partnership, I think that's
Absolutely.
also
That's the right window because then you can confidently walk into a marriage or a partnership knowing that your health is good.
that's great. If results aren't ideal, and is it ever too late? Because, or are fertility issues, can they be improved after intervention?
Okay, so this is a little tricky.
Hmm.
Most cases of semen health would not respond to medication unless, of course, there is an underlying hormonal issue.
Okay.
Sometimes there is a condition which is known as a varicocele, which is basically the blood vessels around the testes are dilated.
Okay.
So they may be operated and corrected, and that might improve the sperm health. But largely, the sperm health not being good is a function of some comorbid condition or genetic issues which cannot be changed.
Got
A
it.
large proportion of our patients have sperm issues because of mumps that they had in their childhood.
Oh,
So even though universal vaccination is there, there are still people who have missed out on their vaccinations and they develop mumps during their childhood. So these are conditions where unfortunately medications do not work. But the good news is when you go for an intervention such as an IVF or an IUI, you can get a pregnancy with very few sperms as well. So
right.
while we cannot improve the sperm count, we can work with few sperms also to give you your own child.
Right.
So we are not able to treat you, but we are definitely able to solve your problem of infertility.
That's a that's a hard hitting fact, and also a
True.
very I think that would also deter men to somewhere not get tested because something if it's that irreversible for them to know, I mean, it might just have a bearing, I feel.
Yeah, so it works both ways.
Yeah.
Once you have a good report, you're like assured that something is everything is okay with you.
Right.
Once you do not have a good report, you brood over it.
Yeah.
We often say that a sperm count tends to be like your bank balance. You
Right.
repeat your semen test again and again to see whether your bank balance is improved or not. So
Right.
that's something that plays on the man's mind very often.
Right.
But the assurance that we'd like to give out to most men is almost all of them can father their own children,
Hmm.
even albeit maybe they require a procedure. So that way, the man's infertility problem or male infertility is sorted out.
Okay, so that clears so many things for people, I believe. And one question also that um, if you have no sperm, can you still be fathers?
Okay, most people with no sperm would still be making sperms in their testes.
Okay.
So there's something called surgical sperm recovery.
Yeah.
So we've identified somebody with no sperms in his ejaculate, that's the semen that's come out.
Hmm.
But we've done the test and we've assumed that he still may be making some sperms in the testes. There are two conditions which are known as non obstructive azoospermia and obstructive azoospermia. The essence of both these conditions is there still be a possibility that we find sperms in the testes. So we actually put in a needle in the testes, take out the sperms from there,
Hmm.
identify the living sperms, and inject into the female's eggs to form babies and get a pregnancy.
Okay.
The pregnancy rates are also acceptably good. So we need to intervene as early as possible because in some cases of non-obstructive azoospermia, over time, the testes may shut down totally and not make any sperms. So there's also something called the microteaser,
Yeah.
where we actually take out small bits of testes under microscopic vision, where the chances of finding a sperm are pretty good,
Okay.
even though you would have had no sperms in the ejaculate.
Okay.
So all put together, the proportion of men who have no sperm and yet not being able to father a child is very, very low.
Very low. So you can become fathers
Absolutely.
even if you have no sperm count, but definitely with surgical intervention.
So I would always mention to people here that in case parenting is an issue, and even if you have a low or a no sperm count in your semen analysis, still seek out specialist opinion. There could be ways and means to get you your child, even though it may not essentially be a natural conception.
In the end, doctor, I feel the whole conversation where we started about can men really father children at any age? They can, but maybe the offspring might not be of the best health. So it really becomes more important to have the right intervention at the right time, right?
Absolutely. I'll just paraphrase this for you. See, the point is can males or men become fathers at any age? Should they become fathers at any age? And to answer that, as you grow older, just as in other biological processes, the sperm quality also worsens. So please make sure that you're using your best sperms because you want to leave behind healthiest offsprings on this earth. And for that, it's essential that we parent children in the best of our healths and not when it becomes a medical intervention.
Okay. Doctor, before we wrap up, I have a couple of myths, a rapid fire myth round
Wow.
where you
Okay.
can just
Ready.
tell me whether it's a myth or a fact, and then probably if you want to explain it further, you can. Now, looking at it, I think some of them we have addressed in this podcast, but it would be fun to see how you respond to them. Okay. Men stay fertile forever.
Yes, men do stay fertile forever, but the fertility changes with age.
Okay. Tight underwear causes infertility.
It doesn't cause infertility, but is one of the reasons for bad sperm health, so you should avoid tight underwear.
Okay. If you're healthy, you're definitely fertile.
Absolutely not. Outward health has no indication that your sperm health still may not be healthy.
IVF is only needed because of female infertility.
Absolutely not. We've discussed this. IVF is today's scenario 50% because of the man, 50% because of the female infertility.
Protein supplements always reduce fertility.
No, not always. Protein supplements in moderation is actually helpful for people who have protein deficient diet, especially as we say for veg diet people. But overdoing anything would have a consequence.
Smoking affects lungs but not fertility.
Smoking affects everything. It affects your cardiac condition, your lungs, and most definitely your sperms. Sperms have more DNA damage because of smoking.
One normal semen report guarantees fertility.
One normal semen report assures you that things are fine, but things can go wrong, and the report in itself may not be very reliable. So, actually, it should be supplemented with another report done at least 2 months in gap.
So, on that note, one fertility report is valid for how long?
The report is valid largely so long as this is corroborated by other factors. But in case we are not ending up with a pregnancy in spite of all reports being fine, it makes sense to repeat the test at least 2 or 3 months apart.
Doctor, lastly, if every man listening to this today remembers one thing from this conversation, what would you want that message to be?
See, we have a saying in Hindi up in North India. It's called "Mard ko kabhi dard nahi hota." We have to understand that here the strength does not lie in avoiding. The strength actually lies in taking responsibility and making sure that you are the one who gets yourself tested first, even before your partner.
And for couples who are currently navigating IVF, because like we have also navigated this path in this podcast, that it's not one person at fault, it's not a blame game, it's a journey, and they're in this together. What's your message to the man standing beside their partner?
So, as far as my practice goes, my answer or my suggestion to all your men who are seeking treatment or undergoing treatment: do not be the silent partner. Be there, ask questions, make sure that you are also demonstrating that you are in it together. You make sure that you make the right lifestyle choices, not because it may help you, but because it shows that you care.
On this World IVF Day, we have chosen to talk about such a missed opportunity about male infertility. But what gives you hope about the future of fertility awareness and male reproductive health?
See, in 2026, almost 50 years after the first IVF baby was born, I can stick my neck out and tell that male infertility is now largely manageable. What is needed or necessary is that we need to talk. Once we start talking, the treatment part becomes really easy.
Thank you, Doctor. This conversation has been so revelationary and mind opening that I'm sure the audience will also take away such gems to understand the real cause and effect of male infertility. Thank you so much for opening this conversation with us.
Always there, looking forward to coming again.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
If today's conversation has taught us anything, it's that fertility isn't about blame, it's about understanding. For far too long, we've treated fertility as a woman's responsibility, when in reality, it's a shared journey that deserves equal awareness, equal participation, equal compassion. The earlier couples seek answers together, the more options they have, and the more hope they create for themselves. On this World IVF Day, let's replace myths with science, silence with conversation, and stigma with support. Because asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's the first step towards hope. Thank you for joining us on Fertility Tales powered by Nova IVF Fertility. I'm your host, Simrat Chamkar, and we'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.